Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to another experience of Me and Paranormal You. This is Ryan Singer, your host. If you're now listening to the program for the first time, we have in-depth conversations with people that are outside of what mainstream science would consider the normal, the paranormal. So that covers all kinds of fun topics. I'm excited today because we have Monique Pliakos. Am I saying that correctly?
I say it Pliakos, but that's probably the more Greek way of saying it.
Well, then let's say Pliakos. Monique Pliakos, who Monique, you wear many hats.
I do.
Amongst those hats, you're a certified hypnotherapist.
Yes, I am.
And you have experience in past life regression.
Mm-hmm.
To help people, travel through their past lives and see what was going on there. You do tarot, you work with orgone, and all kinds of, and you also do Reiki. You're a Reiki master. So this is like, when I say there's lots of hats, there's lots of hats that all kind of tie into, the same kind of hat rack in a really interesting and fascinating way.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to help people. Since I was little, that was my thing. I'm a super sensitive empath, and I'm always like feeling the need to go help and to make people feel better. I'll share this with you. When I was little, I used to hug everybody, like people who I felt really needed hugs. I would go up and just like go hug them. And my parents would be like, Monique, you can't just go hug strangers. I'm like, but they need it.
It's funny because I had this realization the other day because, I have some comedian friends who they have jokes about like how ridiculous it is that people are calling themselves empaths. And and I consider myself to be an empath. And the idea that, these same people will believe, in sociopaths, like, lack voiding of all emotion or understanding, human empathy in any kind of way. They 100% believe in sociopaths because they love the podcasts and the TV shows about these sociopaths and these killers and all these other, people. And yet they totally refuse to believe that there's, any kind of spectrum or gradient when it comes to this. And they totally dismiss the possibility that, empaths are real, yet they fully lean into the idea that sociopaths are real, which I find very interesting, that I don't think they realize when they say such things. But so I'm 100% on board with the empath thing. I think, we've had conversations on this show before with many people about, the difficulties that can come with, being an empath and the struggles that one feels, unwittingly, not knowing exactly what's going on. Are there certain techniques you use to put up your bubble, as we say?
Yeah, it took me so long. I I was a doormat. Like I try to put like on my email, like I started YouTube. I try to put stuff out there to help people, information I wish I had that as I was going along, because I was a total doormat. I felt like I had to make everyone feel good because then I could feel good. If I could feel the sadness, the anger, the aggravation, it didn't feel good. So I'm like, I gotta help. I gotta fix this. I have to fix it so I can feel good. And I got into a number of abusive relationships, physically, mentally, emotionally. And, you stick with people because you're like, I have to help them. And it takes so long to realize, like, if people don't want to be helped, there's nothing you can do. And it's okay to walk away. You're not failing. It's okay. And it took so long for me to build my boundaries, to say no to things, and not just say no, but not feel the need to explain why I'm saying no, because I am an over explainer. I'm going to just so we're on the same page, you know what's going on with me. I will over explain. And a lot of times, and I've had conversations, I don't know if it's whether it's empaths or women or what, but I'll say no to something. And people be like, but why? uh, Apparently my no isn't good enough. So now I need to explain. I'm finally building my boundaries. And then you're throwing that at me. Okay, well, because I don't want to, but do we have to make up these excuses? I don't want to have to lie to people. And I actually used hypnotherapy to help myself with that when I don't want to do something, feeling confident enough in myself to say no and not lie. So if it's, I don't want to do something, oh, okay, well, how come? I just don't want to, or I don't believe in that, or I don't feel like doing that. And being strong enough and comfortable enough to speak up for myself. And a lot of times these empaths are just lacking boundaries. So the biggest thing, work on your boundaries, set your boundaries. If you don't want to do something, don't feel guilted, don't feel bad. It's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away from people. You can try to help them. Or if you feel like, oh, they're asking for my help, but I really don't want to do it, it's okay to say no. A lot of it is inner strength. Like that's the first thing you need to build on is inner strength and setting your boundaries. And you mentioned the bubble. Lord, give me strength. I put the bubble around me. If I'm stepping out, it's like, okay, it's like a force field. And a lot of times visualization can help people with that. If you're visualizing an actual physical force field around yourself, protecting your energy, you're visualizing it, it's in your mind, you're doing that work. It actually makes a difference. So you mentioned that protective bubble. That's a huge thing. If you're going out, if you're the kind of person, you need to visualize a force field, some kind of protective field between you and other people, their energy, allowing positive energy to come in and anything less than positive to stay out. That's okay. That's totally all right to do that.
Yeah, I love that description, and I think something that we can make a note of there is there's a big difference between putting up your bubble and separating yourself. I mean, we're not talking about separating ourselves from the world, and I think there's been a lot of like hyper specialization when it comes to, well, what are more ways we can separate ourselves, and the world will reward us for separating ourselves from others in commerce and business and capitalism and all these things, right? There are for branding, etc. But when it comes to what we're talking about here, there's a big difference between protecting yourself and separating yourself. And we're talking about protection here specifically, and to me they're
Isolation
not
is
this.
not the answer.
Yes, exactly. And I'm curious, like, how old were you before you, or how long was this going on before you really leaned into understanding that the protection was important?
I mean, it took me getting into my mid 30s because again, being in abusive relationships doesn't help when you can't protect yourself when you keep falling in the same situations. And it's almost like that tower card has to come, your tower has to crumble down for you to finally get out of a situation. But if you're building your tower, like the tower in Tower is one of my favorite cards. And this is kind of why, because if you don't have a strong foundation, you're going to have to do it all over again. And for me, that tower would crumble in these abusive relationships. So I was able to get out, but it was always devastating and very difficult. And it wasn't until I finally became independent. I was a single mother and I was like, I don't need anybody. I can do this on my own. And it was like once I finally got to that point is when I met my now husband. And it was just we hit it off and things happened, and it took a long time being with him before I was finally comfortable enough to kind of come out of my shell again and be like, we're all into the same things. Like we've done paranormal investigations together. He knows I read tarot, but to really come out, I had to get to the point myself to be comfortable enough. And it comes down to fear. I was afraid of not being accepted, afraid of falling into the same patterns. And I had to finally know, like, okay, I can be who I am and he's going to back me up. And he doesn't question when I say no. He supports me. Like he has my back 100%. So that was helpful. But it took me to be into like my mid 30s to finally get to that point of like, okay, I can set my boundaries. I can do this and be successful. But to be honest, it's every day. I'm still working on things. It's like you finally get to a lesson and it's like, yeah, I've got it. I'm good. And then like something else happens and I think, am I not as good as I thought I was? But it's like a game. You know how like you're in Super Mario and you beat the level and you're like, yeah, I did it. There's always another level that you have to master. And that's why, as much as I've learned and worked on, there's always more to come, which I try to look at in a positive way. Like I get to learn more. Yay.
Yeah, I feel like the final boss in the video game of life is always ourself, right? And it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
we get to that last level, and it's just always a mirror that leads to another level with another mirror on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting because I relate to a lot of what you're saying when it comes to these patterns that happen over and over and over again, and and they're just like, why is this happening? And then you realize, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for myself here and set up these boundaries, and and go from there and really start trying to have a better existence, like feel better about things. And and I think that like attracts like in that way, to where you start bringing those people, like your husband, like what you're talking about. It's no accident that happens once you make those changes.
Absolutely. I'm really big into your vibe attracts your tribe. And when I was in my early 20s and in these abusive relationships, a lot of the people I was around didn't make me feel good. Um, I always was kind of miserable. And I mean, when I was 21, I went into depression. Like, I don't know if you can see my gray hair. I started going gray at 21. And I was in this like spiraling depression. I was in an abusive relationship. I was kind of isolated away from my family, and you go through these parts where you have to rise up, you have to pull yourself out of these situations. Some people are so lucky they have people helping them get there, but not everyone does. And if you're somebody who doesn't have that help getting you out of these situations, you really just have to like know that you are strong and you can do this. You just have to take those steps. You have to walk away. You have to do that work. And that's one of the things with hypnotherapy that I hate scaring off clients, but you have to do work. If you want that positive change, it's work. I guide you there. I help you get there. But if you're not going to be the one doing the work, for example, if you realize your higher self is telling you during a part session, you need to meditate at least once a week, and you're not doing that work, well, I can't help you with that. Like you have to do that work. And it comes with anything in life. Like you have to be willing to take those really difficult first steps to do that work to get to where you need to be. And I know how hard it is because I've been there, but it's worth it. It's worth that pain and that struggle. And sometimes that feeling so afraid taking that step of the unknown. But once you're in it, you're like, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah. And it reminds me when I was taking piano as a kid, and for a very short period of time, and I wanted to quit. And my mom's like, you're going to regret it. You're going to regret if you quit piano lessons. And then eventually, she got tired of me complaining about it, so she let me quit. And of course I regret it. But my piano teacher was always so upset because I was never doing the work in between lessons. And so it's like one of those things, well, you're not going to get good at piano by just having a 1 hour lesson once a week. That's why the practice is involved. Or with athletics, it's like you can't just expect some kind of magical light switch to go off all the time. And so the work is, that's the thing about life, I suppose. The work involved is it's like the opposite of the lottery ticket. And,
Yeah,
I think that's why the lottery is so popular, because it's like, oh, I don't have to do any work here except go to the store and buy the ticket.
exactly. And there are some people who are naturally gifted with things, but not everyone is. So I think everything is attainable. When you think about people's gifts and abilities, I think we all have the ability. I think we're all empaths in one way or another. I think we all have psychic abilities. It's just a matter of, is our door open to that? Maybe some people it's halfway, some it's a crack. Some people have to open that door. That door is there for everyone, I think. But it's like, to get that door open, to open it wider, you have to do the work. And if you're not willing to do that work, you can't expect, what you want from it to actually happen. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And I think oftentimes there's, to date myself, there's Reese's Pieces, like ET was led into, a certain place. And it's just a question of, do you see the candy? And, can you, and then once you recognize the candy is there, will you follow it?
Mhm.
And which I think is an interesting part of the story as well. I mean, you talk a little bit about that on your, on your bio and stuff, but let's elaborate on, following the pieces, the signs that lead you to that door. Because I think so many of us are in this world are so lucky that, a sign comes to us that is so clear that it's almost like you have no choice but to keep going.
Yeah. I mean, when I was little, I had a tree in my yard that was like my best friend. I love this tree. And I had these big rocks, and there was a specific boulder that was in our yard. These big rocks served almost like a fence, kind of like on the property line. And I had one specific one that was my friend, and I would play with them and talk to them. And I used to see these like sparkling lights. It's like little glowing lights that kind of sparkled. And I just remember like I was just so happy in nature, love animals, and I'd hug people. But you're told growing up, that's not normal. No, no, you shouldn't say that out loud to other people. And you're basically programmed that these things happening to you, your experiences are wrong. And I actually did a regression to some of my anxiety, and it was going back to trying to tell family about what I was experiencing and just kind of getting not blown off, but oh, okay, honey. And I remember that devastation of like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't you see what I see? Why don't you have that? And being told even by teachers, like, oh no, don't say that out loud. It it makes you realize like, okay, I'm gonna stop being who I am because it's not normal. It's not okay. And so for me, I kind of closed that door. Instead of being encouraged to open it more, I closed it. And interestingly enough, I was like 19, and here in New England, we have a comic book store called Newberry Comics, but they have gifts and all these different things. And there's a Rider Waite tarot deck display. And I just looked at it and I just felt so called to it. And it was like, as like the light behind it, like come to me. And so I just make my way over, and I knew like I was getting teased, like, okay, you're going to read tarot. But I started doing it, and people would get freaked out. I was so spot on. People would start actually getting, at first, it was like, oh, that's really cool. And then they'd be like, how did you know that? And you could tell they were freaked out. And then that freaked me out. Like, okay, so this is wrong. This is bad. And I went through this process of all these things that I connected with would come off to others like it was bad. And for the longest time in my life, I always thought like I was opposite. Like, am I evil? Am I bad? Like, I feel like I'm the opposite of everything else. And what's bad for people is good for me. 13's my lucky number. And I like black cats, or whatever it is. Like, whatever people said was typically wrong worked for me. And it took a long time, like I said, to embrace that. And I have to give props to our friend Karen Rontowski, because especially listening to her podcast, And when she did like the letters with her sister and hearing from other people, that encouraged me a lot to be able to come out more, in the sense of like, I've been kind of secretly doing my thing, and now I'm going to like tell other people about it and not be so afraid. And ultimately, everything comes down to fear. And I had to release so much fear of what other people think of me, fear of the unknown, all these fears that just can paralyze a person. I had to let go of it and embrace who I am. I went to somebody, we were talking about crystals, and I don't even remember what crystal was, but they're like, oh, what chakra do you feel that in? And I said where I felt it. I'm just like closing my eyes and, oh, well, usually you feel it here. And I was like, but that's not me. I'm not like most people. What works for you is not going to work for me. And I think people need to be a little more open of that. Like, we're all different and we respond differently. Like, we each have our own vibrational signature. So your vibe attracts your tribe. You have like the vibrational range, right? And we're in there. But to get down to your individual vibrational signature, that's tough, because we're so different and unique in our own way. So you, just because something doesn't work for one person doesn't mean it won't work for someone else, and vice versa. So I had to kind of just be like, fuck it. I am who I am, and that's okay. I don't care about what anyone else thinks.
Yeah.
And once I really did that, it was like, okay, I make orgonite and I read tarot. And, you know, I started hypnotherapy. I got certified, and I actually got certified in hypnotherapy. And then I was basically doing reiki in hypnotherapy sessions, which caused me to be like, why don't I just get certified? So I do reiki during hypnotherapy sessions for people.
Oh, wow.
I don't
That's
do
really
it all
cool.
the time. It's just if I feel the called for it, because a hypnotherapy session with me, I got my crystals all over. I'm cleansed before, I cleanse after. Like, I have this setup, and I get into a meditational state where I am connecting with your energies, and I work with my guides, you know, as long as it's within my highest good and my client's highest good, to connect so I can help them. And yeah, like sometimes I'll just get the feeling like, can I give you Reiki? I ask before the session, but I ask during the session as well. Because when you're in hypnosis, you are in control. And if you're like, no, I don't want that, you can say that you don't want it. But I actually only do Reiki during hypnotherapy. But it was like, I'm going to do what works for me. And since I started doing that, it's like, it's so much better. It's such an easier ride than trying to fight to go with the grain when that's not how I am.
Yeah. And it's funny because you're talking about, you mentioned, is there something wrong with me? Like at the beginning of this, like, why do I like everything that's bad or whatever? It's like, it kind of reminds me of like, am I the Antichrist? Like, because it's, in that hardcore Christianity, there's the, the idea, I mean, I guess all Christianity ultimately believes in the second coming of Jesus, but, these ideas that the Antichrist will rise up, and then that's when, that's when you finally have the villain. And what's the, and is the villain is actually even needed really for a hero to emerge, which would be, the second coming, I suppose. But once you realize that, like, oh, this has been labeled as bad, right? And I'm not saying that everything is like this, because obviously it's not. Murder is bad. I think we all agree with that. But
I guess it depends on who you're murdering. No, I'm kidding.
well, there's, my mom sent me this text the other day about, was it the Dalai Lama was asked if they would murder a young Adolf Hitler. And I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, or if it's true, but, and so she said, the Dalai Lama sat and thought about it and then said, yes, I would kill him, but it would be without animosity. Which I was like, oh, okay, that is interesting. I this was happening like when I think we were texting about Putin, and then that happened. But anyway,
Well, I would
it
think
was
like I
weird.
would kill him with kindness. Like maybe if you could go back in time, would you kill a child or would you try to nurture him and be there to change things? I guess that's my mindset.
Yeah, I don't know. Until I am capable of time travel, I guess I don't have to worry about that.
Oh my God. I have to tell you about time travel.
Oh, okay. Let's transition into time travel.
No, it has to do with hypnotherapy though.
Okay. This is
So
this is right up my alley.
because my husband was actually like, you got to bring up this story. So my husband and I met in professional wrestling. He was a professional wrestler and I went to school to learn how to do professional wrestling. Yes, another hat I wear. But we worked together. But before we actually worked together, he was in a match with somebody, really big guy. And they have things like chops where you slap the chest. But this big guy, like my husband's character is the heel, a bad guy, and he's getting in his face, poking his finger in the other guy's chest. And the guy slaps him. Well, when my husband got slapped, his legs folded in like an accordion and he dropped. And he was unconscious. But within like a minute, he got up and he did the match. Watching him, you could tell something was off. He wasn't with it. It wasn't until after the match, 15 minutes later, he was out back and he kind of comes to and everyone's like, are you okay? Are you okay? And he's like, what are you talking about? Am I on? Do I have to go out? He had no recollection of wrestling. He had no recollection of going out into the ring. So it wasn't till the owner came out during intermission with the DVD of the match showing him, you just wrestled. And there was a mirror on the wall behind him. He sees like he's sweating. He has marks all over him. His hair's a mess. He had no recollection of it. Now, after I became certified for hypnotherapy, I wanted to see if I could regress him to that point of unconsciousness, because just because your subconscious isn't active doesn't mean, just because your full consciousness isn't active, like your subconscious is always going. I wanted to see if we could get into the subconscious and see what was going on. So I regressed him. We got to a certain point, like he remembered going through the ring, getting in the ring, getting slapped. And he's like, oh, my jaw, oh, that hurt. He starts going through it and then it goes black. And then he comes back to it and he's leaving the ring. So it was almost like a part was redacted, which was really weird that this middle part of blackness happened that we couldn't get to. Now, fast forward to like a month ago.
Okay, now something's going on here.
My husband had a dream.
Whenever I hear now, that's a very
now we're getting to the good stuff.
That's like okay, and people listening are like, yeah, shut the fuck up and let her get to now.
Oh, should we make them wait? No. He had a dream, and he had a dream about wrestling where in wrestling, it's called a rib, where you're pulling a prank on somebody. And some people were ribbing him and they were like taking his stuff and hiding it. And he had to get to the ring and he only had one boot and like his bag was gone and it had his other boot in it. And he was getting really frustrated. And then he saw me and I guess I came up to him and I was like, you're not as nice as you think you are, as you want people to think you are. And I was kind of telling him off about how he's not really nice. And when he was telling me about the dream, I brought up to him, well, think about back when you were wrestling at that point in your dream where you were in time. Think about some of the people that you weren't so nice to and who maybe those interactions are making you think that way and having it come up in your dream. And so I said, maybe what you should do is a meditation where you go back in time to the points where you watch the interaction of you, how you treated those people one at a time, the way you talked to them, what you did to them, how you treated them. Watch that interaction. And then as you watch yourself walk away, go to that person and apologize. And then once you've apologized to everybody, go to yourself at that point in time and talk to yourself at that point of time and apologize and say, like, I'm sorry that this is what happened. I forgive you. You need to forgive yourself. And so he's like, okay. So it was kind of a crazy day. And he's like, I don't have time to meditate. I have to shower. I said, meditate in the shower. I do it all the time. The water is cleansing. It's a good conduit. Just do your meditation in the shower. So he did. He said he was able to get in right away. Like he could envision everything, like watching it like a movie. And he did that. He did the work. He apologized. And when he got to himself, it was himself probably like 15 years ago, wrestling in like the wrestling gear when he had long hair. And he has a conversation. And one of the first things after the current Alex is telling his younger self, you know, I'm here. I want to apologize. Things are actually really good. You have a great future. And younger past Alex goes, so what you're telling me is time travel is possible. Because that's a huge thing where he would go back and forth. Like, is it really possible? Is it not? And he had this conversation with himself. And he's like, you know, you're going to be a dad. You're going to have kids. You're a great dad. And his younger self is like, really? I'm a dad? And he's like, yeah. And they had this great conversation. What he realized after the fact was it wasn't until after he was knocked unconscious where he started saying stuff like, if I ever do get married and have kids, I'm done wrestling. I'm not going to do it. And he started thinking more about family. And so what we put together is, we think what happened was that point in time where he went back to himself was when he was knocked unconscious. And that was that redacted part in hypnosis we couldn't get to, is because it happened, but it hasn't happened yet because there's no such thing as time. When you think about it, it's happening all at once. But it seems like he was talking to himself who was unconscious during the match.
Okay, so what we're saying here is through meditation, we can time travel and understand. Now, if we understand that for some reason there still is going to be maybe some kind of filter or weird blocking on being able to access when that time travel happens in the present moment, and it'll appear to us as maybe something else or a lack of anything at all.
Yeah.
If we interact with ourself.
I'm just saying it's possible. But think about past life regression. What are we doing? We're going back in time because time's not linear. And they're like, people heal themselves in regressions. You can have a client who was abused. You can bring them back to that point of abuse and empower them. And different people need to be empowered in different ways, but sometimes it's as easy as, you know, them telling that person off, like, you can't do anything to me, you know, like, look at me now. Yeah, you try hitting me now and see. And, you know, like one time somebody, he, you know, beat the crap out of the guy who was abusing him. However, we need to process it, but it helps. So who's to say when we're going back and we're doing things for ourselves, it is a form of time travel and it makes a change in your present and future.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Because, I mean, I do believe that consciousness is the key to all of these things. And the, you know, whether it's all paranormal stuff or, you know, because the idea that consciousness is the foundation of the universe, which stems from idealism, to me is something that I'm really getting excited about the more I learn about it, which is very little at this point. But this, and if, like Dr. Stephen Greer says, and other people talk about, if consciousness is the advanced technology that, you know, aliens and, you know, are using to, you know, traverse through space and time, and they're UFOs and other things, consciousness is the technology, right? And a way to tap into consciousness and utilize consciousness as almost like crowbar to get into the door of consciousness would be meditation. And within that, there's also, hypnotherapy, regression, etc. So it stands to reason in my mind that by your husband meditating in this time and going back in time and actually using consciousness as the technology to time travel. I mean, I think what stands out to me the most is, in what world of the normal, right, does us traveling back to kind of go forgive our past self, in what world, what strikes me the most is the past self said, so time travel is real, almost as if the past self was completely unaware that he was doing this, like, just mind exercise, if we would just want to call it like a simple mind exercise, like as almost as if they had their own separate sort of thought process and experience of this moment that was happening.
Yeah. Because it's not like the Time Machine H.G. Wells where like you're going in this little machine and you're hitting the buttons and pulling the lever. It's like, I don't think that's the time travel that we're experiencing as people. I think it's all mentally. Like when you think about it, think about ESP. I think, and I don't care if people think I'm crazy because this is me being me. I think we all have ESP and we don't realize it. And we need to work on tuning into where the thoughts are coming from. How often you think about somebody and they text you or call you, or you're thinking about what you want to eat for dinner and your friend's like, hey, what if we have this for dinner? Like, I was just thinking of that. Whose original thought was it that transferred into the other person? It's ESP. We just don't realize it because in our head, it sounds like our own voice, like it's our own thoughts.
Yeah, I 100% believe that. And, extrasensory perception is really cool stuff. And sometimes I believe in it so much. I don't know if this is going to make sense. I believe in it so much that sometimes I feel like it can make me lazy, because I'll be thinking, like, a perfect example is the shamanic Reiki healer that I have seen, Sarah Goff. And the last few days, I've just been thinking to myself, oh my God, I really got to touch base with Sarah. And then late last night, I get a text message from my friend Angela. It's like, oh, do you want to have Sarah on your podcast? And like, I've been thinking about Sarah for days, but knowing that
You're putting that signal, or is she putting that signal into your mind to make you think about
well,
it?
yeah, either way, but how it makes me lazy is this, because knowing that I'm not just thinking about her for some random reason. I need to connect. And since I know this isn't a random reason, I'm sure she'll reach out, right? Like,
But it works.
Yeah, but it works. But sometimes I can take it too far and be like, oh, I definitely sense that I need to be, talking to this person. And I'm sure they're going to reach out. I don't have to worry about doing it because, I'd rather, I need to watch Billions, the new episode of Billions. But yeah, no, 100% ESP is, I don't mind saying it. It's real. And I think everybody knows it, whether they want to admit it or not.
But our minds are the most powerful thing in the world. We can do anything. Think about determination. Think about, like, if you put your mind to it, if you really want it, you can do it. The people who in emergency lift cars off of babies, that wasn't the physical strength. That was the mind saying, you need to do this. When your mind truly believes something, that's it. So one of my big things, and my husband and I tell our kids this all the time, if you say you can't do something, then you're right, you can't. You've already made that decision, you can't do it. But if you put in your head, like, I can do this, if you put that work in and you try and you believe in yourself, you can do things. So I don't know necessarily if you say, I believe I can jump off this tower and fly and not fall to my death. Not sure about that, but so many things, if you believe it, you can manifest it, you can make it happen. And a lot of it is manifestation as well, because you have it in your mind. But if you're always putting those negatives in your head, I can't do this. Well, you're right, you can't, because you
Yeah,
already said that you can't do it.
100%. And there's believing you can do something and understanding you can do anything. And then on the other side of that coin is, this isn't the exact right word I want to use, but being reckless with that knowledge, like pushing it too far just for the sake of trying to show people or, show yourself that you can do it, like jumping off a building and because I know I can fly. Right. I mean, at some point, like, what is the reason why you're doing something? I think is important as well, just for the sake of saying you can do it. Like, I was having this conversation just last night with someone, or yesterday afternoon. I was playing softball, and a friend of mine had both seen a very specific tattoo that someone had gotten and posted on the internet, and it was going around the internet. And he goes, do you think he would have got that gotten that tattoo if the internet didn't exist? And immediately I was like, no, he wouldn't have. He only got the tattoo so he could put it on the internet to show people he got that tattoo, right? And so when I don't want to say jumping off buildings and proving you can fly is the same thing, but almost in some sense, it doesn't feel like Neo unlocking his abilities in the Matrix.
And that's the thing. I always try to say, like, for myself, as long as it's within my highest good. Because also with manifestation, like, oh my God, I'm going back to when I was like 12 doing like love spells with my friend, it's like, oh, I want so-and-so to fall in love with me and that. And then, oh, we get together and it's freaking awful. It's like, oh, this guy sucks, because it wasn't in my highest good, but I manifested it. I kind of forced it and fit it in there. So it's kind of like knowing too, it's like believing in yourself. For me, I feel like it's best when it's something positive for yourself, for your highest good. And I'm all about listening to my guides, like, if you don't want me to do this, give me a sign. Or oh my God, I'll be flipping through my tarot cards like, yes or no. No. Are you sure? Yes. Oh, yes, I should do it. No. It's like I'm trying to manipulate the answer I want.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, that's the thing. It's about knowing, like, when you have just good intentions to begin with, like for me, I want to do good. I want to help people. I'm always thinking, am I doing the right thing? And that's important. But if I want to manifest money because I want lots of it and I don't want to have to work anymore, like, not going to happen. But is that really what I need? Is that my journey? I don't think so. So it's like, stop trying to force squares into round holes. It's like, don't just do it to say, oh, look what I can do. Like you said, you got to do it for what's best for you and others.
Yeah, what's the actual purpose of this?
Yeah.
And, and it goes back to something you talked about earlier, when it comes to being an empath and understanding, okay, I need to be, making sure I'm not overwhelmed by everyone else's feelings, wants, emotions, desires, or whatever, and fears and sadness. It's like, okay, why am I doing this? Is this really me? Right? Separating and sifting and getting to the heart of the matter and finding the gold nugget that truly is what's good for your higher self. I think, and we have so many things coming at us from all over the world nowadays that it can be difficult for people who aren't aware of it to try to sift and separate. But
it's not easy.
It's not
and
easy.
Again, it goes to doing the work. And sometimes it's sifting through really uncomfortable feelings of like, I think most people have that human nature, that tendency to be like, oh, I don't want to experience, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to go through it. And it's like, but you have to face it. And that happens in hypnotherapy, where I will have people say that, like, okay, What are you experiencing right now? Because not everyone's visual. So it's like, what are you experiencing? Nothing. I got nothing. Come to find out later, oh no, they were getting something. They didn't want to deal with it. It's like, okay, well, all you had to say is this, but I don't want to deal with that. Okay, we'll go somewhere else then. Let's turn around, rewind, whatever. But they don't want to face it. So it makes it difficult. You can't bring that positive change if you don't want to do the work. And sometimes it's facing the ugly. And sometimes we're the ugly we don't want to have to face.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm also a big proponent of believing, the script that we have running through our brain, on a very low level, something that is very easily done and something that we don't pay attention to that much. And I think trying to do like a 24-hour silent day, like a 24 hours of silence I've never done 48, but it really came clear to me the first time I did like a 24 hours of silence, no reading, no writing, no phone, no electronic devices. The only thing I'd let me do was like shine my boots or something, right? And meditate or, try to nap or whatever. That's when you become really aware of the scripts that are running through your brain. And those scripts can be so easily influenced by the outside world, specifically the effects of the last, 7 to 10 years of binge television. And I find that, like, I binged Mindhunter, which is a show on Netflix about like the FBI developing their office of, serial killers or whatever. And the content of that program is so dark. But the show is so well made, it's hard not to binge it when you have the time, especially during a pandemic, that for, at least a week after binging Mindhunter, I did not want to be in my own head because the images and the darkness, and I'm very susceptible to that. I should say that, not everybody, but I'm very susceptible. If I'm binging a certain type of program, like I have to be careful about what I binge because, it overtakes my fucking brain. And I don't want those images in my mind. Right. So like, I don't want to confront it.
I get what you're saying. And I don't like dramas. I feel like there's enough drama on this earth. I don't want to have to watch it on TV or in a movie. Like, I don't want it. I want comedy. I used to love horror. And then I had kids and I turned into like, that's somebody's child. Like, that thought going in my head, like, what the fuck is wrong with me now? But I love comedies. And even now, there's so many comedies. There's a lot of dark comedy. And there's always like this, you're watching it, it's making me feel more depressed than laugh. Like, what is this? How is this a comedy? I just want to laugh and feel good. And I've noticed over the past how many years, more of those coming out. And it's like, you can't call that a comedy. Like, I feel kind of depressed after watching it. Like, that's the opposite of what a comedy should do for you. But yeah, like, I just want to fucking laugh and feel good because, yes, watching shows like that in your head, I think I know what you're talking about because it's like my mind, it's almost like I'm living in it. And it's like I'm out of reality. I'm now in there. And I can't do that. That's not healthy.
Yeah.
I need to step out of that. At least if my mind is in comedy mode, I can just be funny and silly.
Yeah. And it's, images that I see visually, they burn themselves into my mind. And like when I was a kid, I was very easily scared and had nightmares. My parents wouldn't even let me look at scary images like in a magazine or a TV guide or something, because that image would come to life in my dreams. And so I've always been very susceptible to that. And it's the same way if like I binge a show like Mindhunter, which is it's like you cannot get darker when it comes to the theme and the imagery in a program like that. And it affects my like ability to be able to sleep. And, I just don't need that shit in my head. But I think what's interesting too is trying to understand the difference between reality and what is imagination. And so I think I wanted to get into that because of, when it comes to past life regression. The skeptical side of the world is, obviously coming from the point of view where past lives, okay, we're not even going to concede that, let alone that you can do hypnotherapy to get into something that we don't even believe is possible. And hypnotherapy, I know that it's scientifically proven, et cetera, but we still consider it to be fringe and not legitimate, right? So I think I've only done past life regression once, past life therapy one time. And I wasn't physically, I got into a physically uncomfortable position by no fault of the hypnotherapist, to where I was kind of doing like a core exercise, like the whole time, but I still had what I felt to be, pretty profound experience. So I'm totally on board with this. When it comes to separating the idea of reality from imagination, I'm interested what your thoughts are as the practitioner when it comes to guiding your patient or your client through these past lives. And are there ways for you to understand or identify things that the person may be seeing that may be becoming or interfering, that are maybe from their imagination as opposed to the actual true experience of their past life? Does that make sense?
Yes. One of the most important things with hypnotherapy, anytime somebody regresses, is you have to be so careful not to lead the person. So when we go into a past life regression, I might say, okay, wherever you are, is it day or night? Are you sitting, standing, lying? I'm giving options, because if I say, what time of day is it? I'm kind of putting in their day, or, is the sun shining? Like, if you put things like how many people are with you or who's with you, it's implying who's with you. Somebody's with you. What happens is it starts manipulating the mind into thinking, oh, wait a minute, what I'm experiencing is wrong. I need to manufacture something inside now. So you have to be extremely careful not to lead people. So a lot of it is the way you're wording things, because you cannot lead anyone. You need to let them have their experience. With these kinds of things, anytime somebody says, well, was that real? Did that really happen? I can't give that answer. I can't say, yes, it's real, or no, it's your imagination. The way I try to explain it is, I think it could definitely be real, but regardless of whether it was real or just your imagination, did it help you? Because our mind, whether it was something that really happened and is unlocking the door to answers to help you with what's going on now or give you some kind of understanding of what's happening, or it's just your subconscious mind trying to play a movie for you to make you understand what is going on where you are now, so you can learn a lesson on how to get better, how to heal. Regardless, did it help you? And at the end of the day, isn't that what's more important? Because I don't say like, oh, go do a past life so you can go brag about like what you did in a past life. For me, it's about healing. It's about finding out about yourself. I did a past life regression, my first past life regression. I'm in class for hypnotherapy because this is how we learn. We practice on each other. And I'm doing a past life. I'm going in. I come into my death scene where I am on fire. And yeah, I'm they're like, okay, where are you now? I'm like, it was really dark and I felt so out of it. And it's hot. And I'm like, there's fire. I'm on fire. Just like, oh, what? And I realized like I got pulled out of there. But as I got to my death scene, what had happened was I was a healer. I used plants in my hands and I'd heal people, and it was very taboo. And there was a father who found out what I was doing, and he pounded on my door and he beat the shit out of me. I mean, he was like grounding and pounding me, beating me up until I'm like a bloody pulp on the floor. And then he set my house on fire with me still inside, and I burned alive. So that was my first past life experience. which taught me when I'm bringing somebody into a past life, bring them into a point in that life where they're doing something they routinely enjoy doing. Most people don't routinely enjoy going to their death scene. So I did learn a lesson, but I was able to learn from that. And when I've gone into past lives, you can always set your intention with hypnotherapy, and especially with past life, set your intention on what you want to do. I set an intention one time while going under hypnotherapy for a past life regression for myself. I want to know more about why I am the way I am. Because I often feel very lonely. I feel I don't fit in. I feel like I'm always on the outside of all these circles of people I want to jump in and play, but I can't. And it brought me to a past life where it wasn't even on this realm. It was a different realm before even coming to Earth, being incarnated. And I was able to learn that I don't fit in because I'm different. And that's okay, because there's other people different like me. We're just kind of spread out. But there was a lot of information. So whether that's real or not, does it matter? It helped me.
Yeah, that's really interesting because now my mind is racing. I mean, I love the answer, but something you say at the end sparks a whole different racetrack in my brain, which is you often hear people talking about aliens kind of look at Earth as a playground. And, you know, I'm not here to say that's true or that's not true, that, you know, there is like this idea to me that when we talk about Earth being, you know, the most special planet in the, you know, the universe, where all these different entities and aliens like to come and observe, you know, and interact because it's this perfect, you know, wonderland for them. It's like, okay, well, this is just like an expanded sense of self-importance, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, you know, we are the chosen planet, right? And like humans are more special than everybody else, right? And you do hear this in like ufology lore a little bit. But to put aside my bias against that kind of thinking, when you talk about you weren't in a past life, you weren't even in this like dimension or this realm.
It was a past life. It just wasn't an incarnation on Earth past life.
Yes. So it makes me wonder if all of these aliens or these different entities that want to come back to Earth or come to Earth and interact for a little bit, because there's something special about Earth, if it's not simply because they've been here on Earth as human beings before in one of their past lives. Does that make sense? That like maybe Earth is like home base.
Well, for this experience, what was going on is we were being called to be incarnated on Earth to help, because we were destroying ourselves and we had to come in to help them. And it was almost like an army type, like, you need to go, you have to go help. And we wanted to help, but it was also like this great sadness because we knew like we wouldn't be back for so long and this is our home. And it was kind of depressing. It's like, I don't want to go. It's like a sense of duty, but we have to, you know, like, I don't want to fucking go there, but okay, I guess that's my job. I got to go do it. That's what it was like. Like, you want to help, but at the same time, it's like, we're sacrificing so much to go and we're going to be separated and it's going to be really hard and this is going to suck. But okay, let's go. So it's interesting with what you're saying, because in this past life, it wasn't oh, let's go and play and let's go do this. It was like, fuck, we got to go take care of shit. We got to go to work. So it's just very interesting because, yes, a lot of people say, like, this is the playground or this is the experiment or all these different theories. And for this, it was like, oh, they're fucking shit up. We got to go stop them.
Yeah, that's interesting because another part, one of the hangups in when I was describing that out loud to me in my own mind was like, well, I don't know why I believe this, but I'm just like, well, aliens or these other entities probably they live so much longer than humans, right? So like, a time between past lives, or or is there even really an end to their existence, right? And but you mentioned the sense that you had was you were going to be gone for a very long time. And now I understand that very long time means different things to different people. For me, a very long time is 50 years. But for someone else, 6 months might be a very long time, right?
But if you look in the eyes of eternity, if our souls are eternal, as far as eternity goes for all time, which is almost like a loop, it's just there and it's happening everywhere and all at once. It could be 50 years, it could be a million years, it could be a day, because time is different to everybody. So it's you're right, it's difficult to say, but my mind translated it as like a millennia or so. Like, we're going to be doing this work for a long time. So
Okay. And that's 1,000 years, right? A millennia?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. I just always, it's one of those things where I always look it up because I always forget. It
I
doesn't
forget too.
stick, but a millennia is 1,000 years.
I'm pretty
Um,
sure. And if
uh,
I'm wrong, you guys can tell me. I don't
a
mind.
decade
I'm
is
okay with
10
being told I'm wrong.
years. A century is 100 years. A millennia is 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stack my chips on that bet.
I went to public school, so if I don't know, I blame it on that.
As a former public school teacher who taught math and science, I totally accept your excuse. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I think we're going to wrap it up here for today. We're, around that hour mark for people. But before we go, it is something exciting is we've partnered up. Monique is an official partner of Crystallize app. So I wanted to mention that real quick, who will be providing content and, insight for users of Crystallize app, which is out there now on, Android and iPhone. So if you haven't had a chance to download that, you should go do that today and write a 5-star review, take a screenshot, send it to me. You're entered into a weekly contest to win free swag and stuff. So you should do that. So we're really excited to have you team up with us to provide, great insight for people. And because, I mean, you're like just a full on, I mean, this is like full on woo. This is a full on woo partnership that
I'm
seems
so
to work.
woo.
How many crystals would you estimate you have?
Um, I have a problem. Like, okay, you were talking about the Reese's Pieces and like taking the candy. I literally today was having a conversation with a friend, and I'm the kind of person, like, I'll be outside and be like, ooh, a crystal. Ooh, a crystal. Like, you put that trail, I will follow it with those crystals. I have a lot. I don't want to say how many.
Okay, you don't have to.
No,
You have as many as you need right now.
exactly. As many as
Okay.
I need, but I also like to get extra crystals. Like, for Halloween, I handed out crystals to kids.
How many kids
Like,
tried to chip a tooth because they thought it was rock candy?
I was like, would you like a crystal? And we didn't get a lot of people, but I had like a giant bag of black tourmaline, like ready to go. Like,
Okay, so
here's some protection for you.
not easily confused with, like, remember rock candy,
Yes.
which is just crystalline sugar,
Yes. But it was delicious because it's sugar.
delicious, straight sugar to the dome. Loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I should go try to find some rock candy right now. But
Is that where obsession came from? The candy that were like shaped like crystals. It's like amethyst, citrine. It's like
yeah,
excited
yeah.
and
Who knows?
enjoy.
I mean, it very, very well could be. I mean, maybe we need to start selling. No, we don't need to start selling sugar through the app. But no, we're very excited to have you teamed up with us.
I'm very humbled to be joining you guys because I saw the app and I was just like, okay, first of all, where has this been all my life when I'm trying to identify crystals that I find? And not just like at the store, but I have some property and it's up in the mountains, and I'm digging up like all these different things. And I'm like, whew, I got quartz. Like, it's granite. We live in the granite state of New Hampshire. It's like, I have this big stone like wall at one point, and I see some quartz, and I'm like, oh, I start digging. It's connected to the granite. So I'm like, darn, I'm not going to take it. But I literally will like dig into the dirt. Ooh, what's this? So it's just so nice that there's an app where we can take a picture and have it help identify for us what it is. But also, I've gone to metaphysical shops where it's like, oh, this is, Apache tears. And I'm like, I don't think that's right, but okay, let's see. And if we had that, I could be like, no, you're wrong. It's not that. But it's just really helpful. But what I loved about it too is it's more of a community. So as somebody who always feels on the outside trying to fit in, this is a nice community where it's like, oh, there's different people with information and different points of views where we can learn from each other. So that was why I wanted to reach out and be like, hi, can I play in your sandbox? Because it looks like a really fun crystal sandbox.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great description. We should just have you be the spokesperson. I feel like you're selling it more than me. That's great. Yeah, so there's all exciting developments, and we'll have announcements about other things that we'll be doing together. And the app is, I'm beta testing right now a version of the iOS and things like that are fixing some bugs that we've been experiencing. So that's probably going to get updated here in the next week. And then we've got other big updates coming with your help and the help of some other people like Samantha Faye, updating and expanding our identification capabilities to a lot more crystals that we'll be able to identify. So we're excited about all that stuff. But let's plug where people can find you. Understandingshypnosis.com, and that's Innerstandings, not understandings. Like
we take information. We don't stand beneath others to take in information. We take it and we bring it within ourselves, and we hold it if it resonates. So we understand.
Oh, I like that.
So hence Innerstandings, because words matter.
Words do matter because they represent meaning and intent. And you've got a podcast with your husband, tarot, so much stuff. You've got all the links on understandingshypnosis.com, if I'm not mistaken. I'm looking at the website right now, and I will be linking the website in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, just click on those, and you'll kind of get hooked up, and you'll be able to see everything that Monique's got going on there. So, and look for her content on the app. There's already one article on the app. We'll probably put up another article either this week or next week. So lots of fun stuff, lots of great stuff. Anything else you want to plug about like social media or anything before we go?
Yeah. So my podcast is Homewrecker Podcast, and you can go to homewreckerpodcast.com or anywhere there's podcasts. Tarot by Monique. You can do tarot, and you can buy Organite. I make lots of Organite, and I have a problem. I was making so much of it because I love doing it. I'm like, I don't have enough space in my house. I gotta sell this. So I do make Organite if you're interested in that. And Twitter @_ Monique Giselle _ Giselle with 1 L, and my Understanding Hypnosis Twitter is @Monique PCHT. So, but you can just go to one of them and find me there.
Cool. And I can link those in the show notes as well for people. So it's an easy find. And just a reminder, we switched over to Spreaker, however you pronounce it. It's Me and Paranormal News, now a Spreaker Prime Podcast. So thanks to Spreaker for hosting the show. We love our new home. So thank you for listening. RyanSarenComedy.com's got tour dates. I have canceled and am rescheduling my Indianapolis, Indiana show for April. That was April 10th or 17th, whatever it was. I have had to reschedule due to other commitments and things. So I apologize if you're looking forward to the Indianapolis show. That'll be rescheduled for later in the summer. So don't worry, I will be coming there. But I've got St. Louis added to the schedule for later in August. So just check that out. You can check my website out for all that stuff. Patreon's got bonus content, all kinds of stuff. So patreon.com/Ryan Singer. Thank you to all the patrons. And that's going to do it for us. And so I guess if we don't see you, at whenever Crystallize does our first live event somewhere, obviously, hopefully Monique will be there. But
I want to go.
Yeah, well, my cousins and I haven't even talked about doing that. I'm just kind of like announcing something that hasn't even been discussed. But we will definitely. Oh, Karen Rontowski and I will be doing some shows up in the Northeast, though. We think in October, around October.
Oh, you send me those dates.
And so, yeah, that'll be fun. So, and we're thinking about doing like obviously some live and some other kind of stuff associated with it. So we'll see what happens. But Monique, this has been great. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Look forward to the future and seeing what we create together with the app. And we'll have to do another interview at some point here, in the somewhat near future as well.
Yes, and you get to come on my show too.
Oh, would love to. Would love to. I mean, as you know, I'd love. It's such a cool origin story between you and your husband meeting, through professional wrestling. What a cool story.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk soon.